sometimes when creating these little animations, I like to add a little texture to everything. So one thing I'll do is add a sort of construction paper texture. So within the graphics folder, there is this red paper and paper texture. So import those if you're not using our project file. And what I basically do is just take this paper texture, I'll put it over everything, and then I'll change the blend mode until it's something that I think looks good. Usually it's something like multiply, like that. Color burn can look cool. It can be a little intense. Depending on the color of the paper too, it might change. But for me, I'm just gonna do a multiply. That's kind of cool, but it looks like the texture is just like overlaid on everything, which it is, which is kind of cool. But what if I want to add this texture, kind of a separate look to our character itself to make him pop out from the background a little bit more? Well, I can go into my hero composition, add that texture, or maybe a different one. Playing with the size of these images will also change how the texture appears. Now, what you'll notice though is if I change this to multiply, for example, we still see the background of this paper and it's a little intense. So I can drop the opacity, which helps. But when I go back to my main video, I have this red composition, which looks so funky. I don't want that. I want the layer, our texture, to just apply to where our superhero is. How are we going to do that? With track mats. So what we need to do is actually create another pre-composition of our superhero. So select all of our superhero, pre-compose it, Command-Shift-C. I'll call this hero for texture. Now, with our red texture, let me just bring up the opacity so we see it a little bit better. If I put this down below our hero texture, take the track matte and change it to alpha matte hero, what you see is we just now have this red textured version of our hero. So what I want to do now is duplicate our hero for texture layer, put this beneath our red paper texture, make sure I turn it on, and then now I can play with the settings of this paper texture itself. So maybe I drop the opacity, something like so, or maybe I replace it with the paper texture. Now I haven't taught you this cool trick yet, I don't think, but to quickly replace any layer with any asset up here in your project file, click that layer with it selected. Make sure you have the layer selected that you want to replace in your timeline. Then take your asset from your project folder and option drag it onto the layer down here. And you'll see what happens is it automatically replaces it. So now let me bring up the opacity. Let's play with the size. Maybe make it like so. And now if I go back to our hero practice or our full comp, now the texture for our superhero is just a little bit different than the texture for our other comp. Now I noticed that when he brings his hands up, the texture doesn't apply. So let me make sure that this texture, maybe if I rotate it around like so, you'll notice it's hard for you to see, I know, but if I put it to normal and then I rotate it to make sure it's covering the whole thing. And then let's change the blend mode to multiply like it was. Cool, so that adds a separate layer of texture to our superhero itself. If you really want to make our superhero stick out, just right click the superhero here and add a drop shadow layer style to the superhero. It creates that sort of construction paper cutout look, which is kind of cool. And you can even do that for all of our layers. So I can copy this drop shadow, copy it, and add it to all of our other layers. Selecting all of them and then pasting. So now we have this sort of construction paper cutout look, which is a cool sort of style too. Cool, so that's a little bit about playing with textures to give your designs a little bit more sort of pizzazz. So if you have any questions about this or anything I went over in this section, please let me know. I would love to see your character animations, so please save them. Save them as an animated GIF if you want, or GIF, or movie file, which I show you how to do in this class, and then upload them to the class, post them online, share them on social media, and make sure to tag me in there at Video School Online and at Phil Ebiner. Thanks so much for watching, and we'll see you in another lesson.